Welcome to the Hard Signal Podcast, a production of Next Gen Insight. And I'm Clayton Tidwell, its founder. Today's guest operates at the intersection of handcrafted food production, operational scaling, family run execution, and a premier CPG growth. Amber Burr is the co owner and operator behind Daddy's Homemade Syrup, a small batch syrup company that her husband Danny founded in 2020 and has since expanded from local markets into grocery distribution, restaurant partnerships, coffee shops, and broader regional demand. What makes Daddy's Homemade Syrup interesting isn't just the product itself, it's the operational reality underneath it, balancing handcrafted quality with scaling production, managing sourcing volatility, navigating compliance requirements, and dealing with packaging inefficiencies tied to glass jars, and rebuilding systems that can support growth without losing the authenticity that created demand in the first place. Today, we're going to get into how that business actually operates under pressure. Amber, welcome to Heart Signal. And if you could, please give us the genesis story of Daddy's Homemade Syrup and where y'all find yourselves today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure. We're based in Evergreen, just west of Denver, and started all of this completely by accident. My husband had some health issues, so we started taking a closer look at the ingredients that we're putting in our bodies. And we used to buy big giant jars of the Aunt Jemima's, Mrs. Butterworth's syrups for our breakfast foods, and realized one day how much high fructose corn syrup, how much artificial ingredients were in it. So he put it back on the shelf and decided to make his own. Little did he know what he was getting himself into. And now today, fast forward, after our youngest daughter started making our logo by hand when we first started, she was very grateful when we turned them into stickers as we kept selling it. And now fast forward today, we've proven that everybody's leaning into the wanting less artificial ingredients and more real flavors, more real ingredients, and have been asking for it in their favorite bars and restaurants. So now not only do we sell it direct to consumer and on our website, but really trying to get that focus, give people options, not just at home, but also in their favorite local bars, restaurants, local retail stores, anywhere that they are trying to look to purchase some of their own stuff or at home or when they're out and about.
So obviously you started this as a family project and now it's a full-time operation. As the company's expanded beyond local markets
Yes.
and into broader distribution, where did the operational complexity start showing up first? And what were the early signs that the business was entering a new stage?
I mean, outside of trying to raise 3 kids while we're trying to grow a business, I would say once we started to come out, there was a couple of tipping points for sure. The first one, I would say, when we started realizing that it wasn't just for breakfast foods. And then we started putting it in coffees and cocktails and ice cream, popcorn, chicken nuggets. My kids have loved to help experiment with it. So that was kind of the first tipping point where my husband really started to experiment with more flavors and try it with different recipes and different uses for it. I would say would be the first big tipping point. And then the second big tipping point would be starting from little 4-ounce jars and then growing those bigger as the demand and the people were enjoying it and wanting bigger jars and finding something that would be more cost effective as we started to grow into the food service and the restaurant side of things as well, and trying to find the right type of jar and the right cost for people as well.
Well, as you began scaling, what was the first thing that kind of stopped scaling cleanly first? Or you had difficulty with that next scaling leap?
I would say all of the flavors and sizes. So about a year and a half ago, we kind of really started to take a closer look at which flavors and which sizes we're selling the best at which channels, and kind of narrowed it down to 20 core flavors and figuring out what makes which flavors sell the best in direct to consumer or retail or the food service size, and being able to narrow that down, still have the flavors that people are enjoying, but make it a little bit more scalable.
That's quite a few flavors of syrup. Was there a point where customer
It is
demand started focusing
still a
operational,
challenge.
who weren't fully ready to make?
Not too much. We've been able to keep up with it fairly consistent. With that being said, then we started kind of leaning more into looking for a co-manufacturer a couple years ago, and we had to interview about 25 different co-manufacturers because of the glass jars and the swing tops that we had, and being able to find the right manufacturer that could help us with that, and also not only the shape but the swing top jar of it, and being able to find somebody that could not only do it but would also be willing to hand label, because we haven't found any machines to date that will actually run our labels through a machine because of the shape of the jar.
You mentioned a few things there that I was going to bring up later rather than putting a pin in it. let's kind of follow up on that there. It
Absolutely.
happens. Glass jars, premium
Yes.
branding versus operational liability. Glass jars, though, they're clearly a part of Daddy's
Yes.
homemade syrup identity, but they also create real operational headaches, like you kind of mentioned with your command. At what point did packaging itself
Yes.
become the scaling issue?
I would say probably a few years ago when we started shipping more and we upgraded our website and started to get more into wholesale and retail. It definitely became more of a challenge as we started trying to ship more and trying to get into more retailers.
What parts of fulfillment actually became harder once your volume increased, and specifically, what is probably made more difficult because you're using bottles?
Packaging. Absolutely the packaging. We want to make sure that we have something that is as sustainable as possible, but also can prevent as much breakage and leakage. If our jars break in the shipping process before it gets to the consumer, it is a sticky mess. So being able to not
Yes.
only have it be wrapped pretty well so that it doesn't break, but if it does break, having something to help absorb some of that in the process to eliminate as much frustration on the customer part at the end.
And how much on maybe a percentage basis, let's hope it's way below 1%, inventory loss or operational waste comes from breakage or shipping damage?
In the beginning, it was definitely more. I would say it was, one in maybe 10 shipments or something like that, and just constantly experimenting with different packaging ideas and lots of research and trying out different samples of packaging. Right now, where you actually wrap it in a lot of biodegradable peanuts as well as some of it's this material that is it helps absorb the syrup if it does break. So it is very time consuming, and we're trying to look at some other options, especially for shipping and retail and wholesale that doesn't involve quite so much, but is still going to protect the packaging as well.
And
But
if you
now
were
it's definitely less
designing the
than
business
one
strictly for
percent. It's very minimal.
good, good. That's good to know. And I love the idea of the absorbing peanuts. That's great. But if you were designing the business strictly for operational efficiency today, would you still choose glass?
Absolutely, 100%. It was
Okay.
kind of one of those no-brainer decisions for us when we first started. We're a family very much involved with recycling and sustainability and trying to teach our kids about that. So it was one of those things that we knew if we were going to start a business that it was going to have to be glass. It also helps protect the quality of the syrup as well. It's a different feel if it's in the plastic versus the glass. It helps it last longer. It preserves that quality and that taste in the syrup as well. So despite the
No chance
challenges,
of
there's definitely been some places we've turned down because they wouldn't accept glass, but we're definitely still working on that. And still, there's a lot of people that like to lean into the glass, and finding those customers are a good fit for us. We would still choose the glass for sure. We just got
um
to make the rest of it work.
so we had kind of a pin and yeah, sure. Going back to one of those kind of pins we had, you mentioned co-manufacturing and you interviewed 20 odd co-manufacturers, but you're also operating your own commercial kitchen setup as well, along with your co-manufacturer. What operational problems does that model bring up and what does it solve? Where's the tension between having both?
We are actually very lucky enough to be able to work with a restaurant that uses our syrup. And that was how the commercial kitchen all started. So we're able to go in after hours and use their kitchens. It really helps us be able to get to the wholesale accounts because we have the commercial kitchen and the right licenses for that and do the bigger production runs, but not have to manage our own whole setup in a typical commercial kitchen or have to share that space with many other vendors or businesses. We're just able to work on the off hours when the business isn't open. So it works really nicely. Not
And
everybody's that
you're
lucky, so we're
using the
very grateful.
and when you use the co-manufacturer, what is the where are those production units going?
Retail and farmers markets. It kind of helps us keep
Okay.
up with our top sellers so that we don't have to keep making the same flavor over and over again. We can do it in larger sizes and be able to keep up with that demand during our busy season.
So a lot of food brands use the word handcrafted. but eventually volume starts forcing operational compromises. How are you managing that tension today as demand grows?
Great question. I think that's a constant question that we're always asking ourselves as we are talking with possible buyers and possible stores that we're getting into, and how quickly things may grow, or different accounts that we're looking at. If it's something that feels to us as more of a cheaper store, mass production, they just are more focused on price and moving products as quickly. I mean, every store is going to want to move their products as quickly as possible, but if it's something that
Sure.
it's more of a cheaper quality, I guess is about a better way to put it, then it's not a fit for us. So being able to constantly look at that as we grow and make sure that their businesses and accounts that would align with what we're trying to do is a big piece of how we look at that.
So along with your selection of customers, you're really selecting your retail partners and ensuring that they align basically with your philosophy and with your customers. So I'm going to guess then that most of your retail establishments are more of these, not craft stores, but specialty grocers. You're not yet, or are you? My research didn't tell me. You're not yet in like the big major grocery stores like Kroger and Safeways and things like that. You're relying on the retail side on these specialty grocers. Is that correct?
Correct. Exactly. And
And
a
so
big
you're
piece of
you're
what
okay.
I have really loved doing along the way is being able to partner with local businesses as well. So I really want to focus on the local independent places first, and then build that relationship with them before getting into even looking at some of the bigger retail places, and being able to have that really a co-collaborating relationship with some of those retailers. So even these buyers are, a lot of brands think of it as kind of an application process with the buyers and trying to get the buyers to get their products. I kind of look at it as a duality of, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, making sure it's a good fit on both angles.
Sure. Yeah. Your products rely heavily on natural ingredients, like vanilla and cinnamon and many others.
Yes.
These categories of inputs can experience great price volatility. How exposed are you to sourcing instability today?
We are very lucky in the fact that we only have a few ingredients. So that definitely helps bring costs down. We are able to, as we keep scaling, we're able to buy the extracts, for example, in larger quantities. So that helps protect us a little bit better, because then the more that we're needing, and they've got a long shelf life as well. So the more we're needing, it helps us bring those costs down and kind of helps us protect against those a little bit. And there's usually a delay with what we're doing from when those prices start to affect things. So we can absorb some of those costs, and we can work with people in different ways with some of our specialty flavors that we may have come out, or different creative options. And then when we do need to increase prices, or we do need to do something more with that, then we usually have plenty of notice to let customers know ahead of time, hey, we're working through the last of our ingredients, the last of our jars of what we were able to continue to keep that pricing the same. But by this date, we're going to have to do something a little bit different. And we'll usually try to offer some kind of incentive for them as well, like maybe like a free shipping or a discounted shipping, or if they're shipping, or special market deals when we're at farmers markets and things like that to help them as well.
So because of this, of the shelf stability, and because of that gives you or allows you to buy proactively and keep a bit more inventory when the prices swing your way, um, that gives you a little bit of runway before ultimately you're running out of that inventory and you've got to buy the higher price inventory. You hold back on increasing prices as long as you can, but at some point you have to protect your margins. Have you ever had to reject a lower cost sourcing option because it would simply compromise the product?
We have not had to reject a lower cost option, but we've definitely intentionally sourced better quality products to be able to get the ingredients that we get. For example, we've had several people through our conversations at like bar and restaurant shows and distributors that say, hey, switch to this sugar. It's going to be a lot more cost effective for you. But we intentionally use pure cane sugar because there is a difference in the price. There is a difference in the quality and the process of how it's made that is better than some of the other sugars out there. And we have experimented with other different types of sugar that are definitely cheaper in cost, but the quality is definitely not the same. And you can immediately taste it in the syrups. We stick with our brands and our pure cane sugar for many reasons, for sure, even though it's a little bit more expensive than others out there.
So where do you think you might be the most vulnerable right now from a supply chain standpoint that customers might never appreciate?
Let's say we're not as vulnerable as we used to be, but our glass jars, we used to only be able to find them from one place, and they had to come from overseas. They were initially sourced through Italy from a specialty jar company. Shipping and supply chain issues became a major issue. We were actually able to find, after a lot of searching, a great local place to help us source some of those glass jars with the swing tops. Hopefully that helps a little bit. It's still always, keeping an eye out for extra suppliers just in case. But the swing top glass jars has been kind of a brand staple for us and really draws people in with the uniqueness of it and bringing that nostalgia to people. Being able to find the people that actually have them and we can get them is a challenge. So hopefully nothing happens with our vendors for that.
I'm curious, where in Italy? Bologna?
But at least they're local now.
Well, originally when
I
they were in
believe
Italy.
Milan area, if I remember right.
Milano. Okay.
I'd have to double check.
So
Now I'm curious. It's been a while.
no, okay. I was just curious. I've done a couple projects in Italy, both in Milano, and quite familiar and love Italy. So I was just curious. So compliance, food safety,
Okay.
growth
Well, now I'm
constraints.
gonna have to go look them up.
You've gone from startup production into commercial kitchens and co-manufacturing relationships, and that means a lot of compliance burden, and those have changed significantly. What part of that transition surprised you the most?
That there is so much to learn and everybody's different. Overall, there's definitely the main requirements and licenses, but there's a lot of variables that surprised me, depending on what kind of ingredients you're using, depending on whether it's refrigerated or shelf stable, depending on where your accounts are, who's buying it, who you're working with. There's a lot of different variables that really surprised me that as we continue to grow and scale, I keep finding more and more. And just when I think I've learned and I've gotten more, then I find something new that I have not had to deal with before.
So because of all these variables, the different kind of documentation and certifications that you need to uh, ensure that you are complying to and keeping on file, et cetera. I'm assuming you're manually tracking that today, or do you have a system that kind of helps you track and comply with all those requirements? Knowing that you have all these variables that you must
A lot of it
attend to.
has been Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it has been manual. Definitely starting to try to get more automations wherever we can in the operations and business as we scale. Really, it's been, even though there are extra things that we're learning along the way as far as compliance and different needs for different places or accounts, so far what I've seen is a lot of them are also very willing to help walk you through that. So as long I've been very open and honest with people, and if there's something I come across that I'm like, hey, we haven't come across that before. What would you recommend? Do you have some favorite companies that you work with or you would recommend, or can you help me get this? And I'd be happy to look into it and see if it's a good fit for both of us to make sure that we're compliant with what you're needing. And that's been very helpful.
So these compliance requirements, do they currently feel manageable, or do you feel like it's becoming a growth ceiling that keeps getting closer?
Say it's definitely manageable so far. And I think as we start to learn more and find more things, for example, as we start to get into distribution and we're looking at maybe third-party audits and things like that, then I think it becomes more of a choice of if it makes sense at that part of our business to go ahead and hire extra people to help us with some of those scaling and challenges along the way to help us get into more locations if it's a good fit at that time. Because I can't do it all myself or with my husband, but that's when we're going to be bringing in more help. Need a bigger team for sure.
And that kind of leads directly into this. So, you've got all this decision-making pressures constantly day to day. As a business grows, what decisions today feel harder than they should?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say distribution is a big one, and being able to figure out which direction to grow. I distribute all of it right now, and I know that as we scale and get more accounts, that's going to become next to impossible. I love getting out and meeting with the customers face to face and getting them samples and working with them directly. And I know realistically, as we scale, that's not going to be possible for me to be everywhere all the time all at once. Figuring out it does work great in retail and local independent groceries, and being able to do it with food service and coffee shops and things like that. I think that distribution piece is going to be a huge part of how we do it, and figuring out the right distributors and how the right people to work with will be a real key piece in how we do this for sure.
So working backwards from distribution, it kind of all hinges quite a bit on inventory and production timing, right? How often are decisions around
Yes,
those being made based on incomplete information?
pretty often. I'm not gonna lie. I would say we are each year we're getting better and better at trying to, yeah,
Sure.
just because there's so many variables and moving pieces with our business. All of our pieces have so far been manually done, and realizing how many different software places or different pieces that all of the inventory and all of the different things are coming from has led me to start thinking more about automations and starting to think about how I can make things a lot more efficient as we scale and grow for sure. I need all
Yeah,
of the
so
information in
you're
one place
finding
would be
out that,
amazing.
right? So yeah, one of my questions
Yeah,
was just going to be like, where does this truth live? And it sounds like it lives in a lot of places and you need a
yes,
single source of truth, right?
it does.
Easier said than done. So that leads directly in. This was kind of a
We're working
question,
on
but we'll
that.
just make a statement. The cost of finding out something too late is quite often really painful, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a statement of fact
Yeah,
there.
luckily we're very lucky in the fact that we have a pretty shelf stable product, so there isn't anything major,
Yeah.
knock on wood, that we've had to deal with as far as finding out too late. We are very lucky. There's a lot of harder things that we could have picked as far as ingredients. So safety wise and compliance and all that, we're really lucky.
Your extracts, those have what, 3, 4, 5 years shelf life, and your finished product,
5 years,
what, has 2 or 3 years to stable shelf life? 5 years.
two
Yeah.
years. Yeah,
That's a lot of there's a lot of forgiveness in there, isn't there? Yeah. So finally, to wrap up,
there is.
when you look
Yes.
ahead over the next few years, yeah, when you look ahead over the next few years, what part of scaling Daddy's homemade syrup concerns you more than it excites you?
I would say just the overall scaling and doing it smartly and not doing it too quickly. I would say the demand and the concept has definitely been proven, and there's a lot of opportunity for us, not only with what we've been doing and growing that, but also in hospitality and lodging and hospitals and doctors' offices, anywhere that serves coffee, for example. I can see the opportunity being massive and just being able to grow that, just like with our flavors, right? My husband has made over 100 flavors, and I also figured out very quickly that I can't
Wow.
realistically scale that many flavors in many sizes. So just being
No.
smart about it and being open to the opportunities that are out there, but knowing that I can't do all of them.
So while it's a daunting endeavor you are on, it's not a Sisyphean task. So you're just going to slowly and methodically plod away and be conservative and just keep growing, but carefully. All right, Amber, thank you so
Yep,
much for your time
absolutely.
today. Well, this has been a great conversation, Amber. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And I hope everybody goes down to the description below and goes to their website and picks up some of Daddy's homemade syrup. Thanks, Amber. Have a great one. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. You as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.